And we're back. What is up, peeps? What is up, Zan? How you doing today, my man?
Yo, yeah, life is good, Jake. How about you?
You know what? Compared to last week, we're doing a lot better. You know?
Well, yeah, I can actually hear you. You don't sound like you're half dead. That's
Heck
always
yes.
a plus. I'm always happy to hear that.
If you guys did catch the last Esports Rewind podcast, or if you're new, welcome back to the Esports Rewind podcast. 6 topics every single week, same day, same time. We talk about the latest and craziest in esports and gaming news. Last week I was sick. This week I'm kind of sick, but definitely have my voice back, and it's good to be back as well. Any announcements before we roll into this one, Zan?
Nothing too major. As always, if you have anything you'd like to share, we love hearing from you guys on Twitter at talk_esports. We got an Instagram account popping right now. It's esports_talk. You know, a little bit of a switcheroo going on there, and I can only say that we've got big things coming.
Yes.
In the next few weeks. Huge things.
We cannot stress enough to you guys. We can't say a single thing, but for all of you watching, these next couple of months are going to be absolutely wild. Please stay tuned. Shall we roll?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's roll. All right, Zan. So my first topic, of course, was a video here on the channel, but I love just kicking things off of your chest. That I don't know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, classic phrase.
It's like your, what was it, a bag of worms phrase that came back like many podcasts. Don't Google bag of worms.
Was that me? I think that was you.
No. That was definitely you, because the word is, the term is can of worms, and you were like bag of worms, and then it's great. Don't do that anyway. We're going to talk about Fortnite very quick, and
by all means.
We've talked a lot about Fortnite pros on this channel. Whether it be some immature things out there, some crazy things out there, a lot that's come to the scene for Fortnite's been great. Now kind of a topic I've been talking about recently brought to Bala. Shouts to Bala, by the way, a caster, a great talent, as well as a great knowledge base in the Fortnite scene. He was talking about Fortnite pros potentially being lazy.
Okay.
And so when I first say that to you, what do you think? Obviously, Fortnite known for their up-and-coming, I would say, younger pros compared to other scenes. If you're asked the question, are Fortnite pros lazy, what do you answer?
Unfortunately, it's nothing good, because I can immediately think, like, a couple angles where I could see where they might be coming from, thinking more in terms of the more grassroots esports, where Fortnite has been helped along, like, quite a bit by Epic Games. Maybe is he referring to, like, entitlement, like players saying, like, I need this, I need that?
I think in a general sense, he's more, I think what I got from it, he's not trying to approach the general Fortnite pro base. He's actually trying to approach those who are signed or have the financial ability to actually go to LAN events.
Okay, yeah.
And a lot of pros have turned down or actually stopped competing at LAN. And that's where he's trying to go at. You know, if you want to be great, if you want to be one of the best Fortnite pro players, you have to actually go to LAN. You have to compete on LAN.
Do we know why players are deciding to avoid LAN? Do they just not feel like being bothered with hopping on a flight or something?
You know, my angle was I don't think Fortnite pros are necessarily lazy. I think to your point as well, they've been very much not sheltered, but really they've been helped so much that the grassroots esports that were a few years, 5 to 10 years ago, are no longer what they are in Fortnite. Epic Games has supplied so many means of income for these pro players.
Right.
They don't have to compete at LAN. So that was my angle on it. I don't think necessarily Fortnite pros are lazy, but the scene they grow up in kind of inherently makes you more complacent because you don't need to go to LAN.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure they'll be feeling the negative effects of that sooner rather than later as, like, LAN, it's a completely different environment than playing online.
Yeah.
Just in your room. So I think there's definitely value there, even if you don't technically need the money. I'd say for the experience alone, it's beneficial.
Yeah, and I would agree, but again, to the Fortnite pros point, it makes a lot of sense, right? You're 13, 14, 15 years old. Your parents maybe don't want you traveling. And even then, we've actually heard pro experiences for Fortnite LANs where the experience is terrible. All of a sudden, you flew to Poland or you flew to Europe to compete. The event kind of sucked. It wasn't worth it. You don't come home with much. You lose out on 5 to 6 days of content, streaming, YouTube, whatever it might be. And so for me, I think it's definitely a double-edged sword of, as long as pro players are, if they're not competing at LAN, as long as they're doing other things. But I don't know. It's going to be a really weird time, especially when Fortnite does reach the point where, these Fortnite pros realize, okay, I'm not a Fortnite pro anymore because I'm not competing. I'm just making content.
Yeah, I'm just a YouTuber at this point or a streamer.
And how long can you survive being a YouTuber when you realize Fortnite's not the end-all be-all, albeit it will be for some time still, but it certainly won't be the end-all be-all 10 years from now, maybe. And so, I don't know. I think it's a weird debate, a great debate as well, especially compared to other esports out there. It's just it's so vastly different to see these up-and-coming Fortnite people having so many ways to make money, and then you compare it to Call of Duty amateurs or the FGC.
Anybody in the FGC.
You can't make money without going to everything. So
yeah, it's like and honestly for the FGC in particular, you can't compete if you don't go to LAN. You can't just be an online warrior and show up to an event, and like it's a completely different environment.
Yeah,
it's not even
So I wouldn't say lazy. I would just say sign of the times. And I don't know if we're gonna have any other esports that do it like Epic Games.
Probably not. I don't think we can. At
So
this
weird.
point.
I think Fortnite's on its own when
Yeah.
it comes to not necessarily being lazy, but you don't have to go to LAN to be a pro and to be successful. And we'll see if that lasts into the future.
All right, Jake. I've talked about Stadia quite a bit on this podcast.
Oh no, is it making a return?
Oh no, not quite yet. I could
Okay.
give a Stadia update, but I feel like people wouldn't want to hear it. So brief update is doing well. I'm happy with it still. Anyway, moving on.
I'm glad you are.
Moving on. So I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't spread the love a little bit. Talk about another gaming streaming service that more people will have access to, actually.
Another one?
Yeah, there's several.
We've talked about a few. We've talked about a lot. You've talked about streaming platforms, right?
Yeah.
Man,
100%.
we've talked about probably between you and me, even on this podcast, we've talked about Facebook, Mixer, YouTube, Twitch.
Oh, not streaming in that sense. Like actually
streaming
streaming the game to you.
Okay, so we've still talked about a few of those.
Yeah, I've talked about a couple. Yeah, but anyway, this new one just launched this week, and it has potentially the lowest barrier of entry of all of them, being it's actually free right out of the gate. So if you're listening right at home right now, you could go try this right after we finish talking about it.
For any
sounds
listeners,
interesting.
we've talked about ones developed by both Google and Amazon, correct?
Google, Xbox, Sony, and I believe that's it currently. Amazon doesn't have one off the ground yet.
And these will be competitors to Stadia?
Yes and no.
Okay.
And I'll kind of get into why in a second.
So this one's free.
This one's free. Initially, anyway. Of course, there's a paid tier, but we'll talk a little bit about that. So this is actually from NVIDIA. This is their NVIDIA makers of for a very long time the best graphics cards for gaming in the world.
Yeah,
I've heard they're like kind of shaky right now, but they still are at the top of the pyramid by all means. And so they've been testing this service for years now. Actually, it's called NVIDIA GeForce Go, or Now. It's called NVIDIA GeForce Now.
And it's a weird name.
Yeah. And basically, it ties into your existing game libraries. So say you're on the go, right? And you don't necessarily have Fortnite downloaded on your phone. You could log into NVIDIA GeForce Now and just play it.
Through your device?
Through your phone, yeah. Okay. As like you can play it on your currently supported are PC, Mac, Android phones, Android TVs, as well as NVIDIA Shield. And you can play any game you own across Steam, Uplay, Epic Game Store, and potentially more. They have over 400 games already available right now.
And this is already out now, too?
Already out, yeah.
This is very, we're going to be in a weird time in a couple of years, man.
Absolutely.
I swear to God, everyone's going to be gaming no matter where they are.
Yeah, nobody's going to have consoles anymore. Well,
data
that's
plans
not
won't
happen.
be a thing. You'll have to have unlimited data for this kind of thing. My God,
absolutely,
you can imagine.
because they're all data hogs. Like I think the statistics on this one was like 10 gigabytes an hour, something like that.
Holy nuts.
Yeah.
That literally is my family's old monthly plan. My dad, that shouts to Mike, we finally, after like having phones for the last 8 years, we finally went unlimited.
Ooh,
but there are still plenty of families out there
yeah.
where they have 10, 12, 14 gigs. This is 10 gigs an hour. An
hour.
Can you imagine little Jimmy? No data plan
doesn't
does this?
I can't imagine how many kids don't know what data plans are and don't know how much data this uses, who's just like, oh, I'm just going to play for an hour. And the funny thing
let me tell you.
Yeah. And I think NVIDIA might realize this because they're doing something very different than all the other streaming platforms in that they're limiting the amount of time you can play. So if you're on the free plan, you can only play for an hour at a time.
What's the gap in between? What is this, some Chinese restriction?
Weirdly enough, yeah. I couldn't get like a hard number on like how long after that initial hour it takes before.
Get back on?
Yeah. Apparently it's some kind of queue system. And if you pay for the paid version, you get like a little bit of an extended period of time of access, and you get higher in the queue. But I also couldn't figure out how long that extended period of time was.
Yeah.
So, but it is early days. It literally just came out this week. So we'll be hearing more information about it soon. But it is very interesting, though, to think like if you have a lot of games in your Steam library right now, there's a good chance you could be in the living room, chilling on your phone, and be like, oh, I just want to load up Half-Life real quick.
Yeah.
Play that on the couch, It's interesting.
That's really super to any device you got on you.
Yeah, basically, aside from Apple devices and NVIDIA.
Yeah, who cares?
NVIDIA has said like, yeah, that's on Apple. Like you got to ask them what's up with that. That's not us.
That's it's gonna be a weird time. It's like now you're downstairs, you got your laptop, you don't want to walk up to your PC or your phone's at your desk, and you're just like, oh, I'm gonna do it on my laptop instead.
Yeah, definitely. Or you don't have to buy like a super expensive gaming rig anymore. You can just grab like cheap like a couple $100 like work machine and be playing games at high-end specs with services like this.
Yeah.
Like I know I'll definitely be playing Cyberpunk. My machine, no way in heck can I run that.
Is it a pretty big game? I've never played Cyberpunk.
Oh, so. It's not out yet. Yeah, but it's looking pretty graphically intensive, and I know for sure there's.
I'm sorry.
No worries. It's okay. I'm sure there's no way I could ever run that. But yeah, I'll be playing that probably on Stadia, realistically speaking.
I think it's interesting now, though. What's going to be the one that dominates all the others?
I think it'll be a kind of balanced playing field in the sense that they're all doing something kind of different. Like this one is giving you access to your broad library of already existing games, right? Xbox in their service is giving you access to a broad library of games that you may have never played or never touched for like a reasonable price. Mm-hmm. And Stadia is making games specifically built around the power of those data servers. So a Stadia game that's utilizing those capabilities, you won't be able to play anywhere else just because they won't have the power to do so. So I think they're all serving kind of different niches. So we might see all of them survive and just be kind of equivalent in a way.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We might.
It's hard to say. It's early days still. The technology's still very new. So,
yeah, we'll see what happens over the next few months, and especially over the past couple of years of playing any game, anywhere, on any device. That's seemingly the future of gaming.
Probably the future of esports.
We can only hope. All right, Zan, I'm going to quickly talk about, I think, an impending issue that's going to continue throughout esports. This past week, we covered one story in the CIS scene for all of you guys who follow CSGO, kind of like the Russian, part of the Russian scene, I should say, but a lot of you guys probably know the CIS region in general embraces quite a bit of the esports scene, but also the Asian scene as well has difficulties when it comes to match fixing. We touched on a story with a CSGO team who has now moved one of their players to the inactive roster, that being a guy known as Ramzik Boss. I know it's a freaking sick name, by the way.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, you wonder where these names come from. Boss is spelled with $2 signs, which is ironic in the fact.
Of course it is.
He's now
Can he spell it any other way?
Right? He's now been accused multiple times of match fixing, and within a few weeks, he's been benched and on the inactive roster. I assume under some investigation, or the team just is. It's confusing. Now, this was all too reminiscent because just from the CSGO scene, I'm sure you guys watching also or listening know more about other match-fixing scandals. CSGO is kind of notorious when it comes to match-fixing, but I'm sure other esports have similar issues of you have these young, like we talked about the Fortnite stories, you have these young, impressionable kids, oftentimes in these... I don't want to say it in an offensive way. You come up in the Asian scene or the CIS scene, and I would say they're more notorious for these kind of scandals, where you have almost mob-like mentalities approaching these teams and forcing them to do things which they don't want to do. We touched on a story, I think it was now probably a few years back. It was actually Captain Mo, formerly of Tyloo, from the Asian scene, and he talked about on a huge Reddit post about his team being approached by the equivalent of what he called the Chinese mafia, and pretty much saying, hey, like, you're going to throw these games, and evidently they tried to resist as much as possible and did, but they were very fearful for their lives.
Right.
And so as we have younger and younger pros come up in those scenes, as well as, NA, EU, whatever it might be, I think match fixing is going to be a danger.
Yeah, I agree. I think on both sides, both in terms of being threatened by third parties to, especially as we see more gambling become more like, more of a thing for esports, more of those people are going to see the dollar signs and be like, oh, we can take a little bit of that. Unfortunately, I feel like there's very little that can be done to stop that because by its very nature, esports is very open in a sense. So it would be hard to say, oh, we're going to keep the teams competing a secret so nobody can interfere potentially, or, hey, we're not going to show who the players are so nobody can influence them or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I think, taking drastic measures such as being like, oh, the players are locked up in this compound for a week before an event to keep them away from any outside influence, that's too much too. So, yeah, I don't know what you would even do to prevent that.
Yeah, I think you make a great point with the more money that comes into it. And we've seen this traditional sports as well. There's probably many cases we don't even know about. But even if sports with very open figures have these issues, think about how anonymity works in the esports scene. How many people from behind their computers or from that you'll never know or actually see, especially with all these online events, can pressure teams simply via so many services say, hey, throw this match, do this. We'll touch more in the future. I think we're going to have an upcoming story here as well about an entire event which was supposedly orchestrated just for match fixing. I mean, these guys can do things that we didn't really think that were even feasible at first. You can orchestrate an entire event, just invite a couple of teams, mix a few results here and there, and place your bets across so many websites. There's so many forms of anonymously doing this kind of thing.
Right.
It certainly will be an issue, and I know there will be. We have the most notorious one in history. I would say iBuyPower. They were caught, but for everyone that gets caught, you got to wonder how many are not getting caught.
Probably dozens at this point, realistically speaking.
Yeah. I think it's a weird moment because, again, like you said, more and more money is entering the scene, and that can be good and bad because, at least to a certain extent, a lot of pros will be making more money. Thus, there should be less incentive to want to throw matches and fix.
Right.
But to the other point of things, with more money comes bigger bets and more gambling, and
bigger fish getting involved.
Yep.
And
all of a sudden you see.
Yeah.
You see, maybe this is obviously way down the line, but you see a Dota 2 International or a CS:GO Major or whatever it might be, and all of a sudden you see these big wigs saying, "Hey, Liquid, hey, Fnatic, like let me give you a couple million to throw, or to maybe lose a game, not even lose the entire thing."
Right.
It's definitely going to be. This is all speculation, but I certainly think it's going to be ongoing, and certainly stories we cover more and more as esports do progress. And I don't know.
Thinking about it, actually. Everything you said just brought this to mind. We're seeing such a rise in the growth of AI products being more implemented in like mid-tournament, right? For tracking how players operate, their behavior, and things like that. So, I mean, I would not be surprised if at some point someone just tweaks one of those coaching AI to determine, like, hey, is this person actually trying to throw?
Oh,
because I imagine people, if it's not something that they do often, nobody's going to be able to be like, oh, I'm just going to miss the sniper shot. It's going to be, you got to think about that. It's going to look off to a certain extent, right?
Yeah.
So
I think you're right. Way in the future.
Something like that would certainly de-incentivize people trying to threaten people in the match fixing.
For sure. That would be a great idea because as of right now, a lot of the time it's just pure speculation. Someone sees, oh, they missed that shot. That's something and then of course everyone goes, they're throwing, but a lot of the times it's not when they're really throwing, right?
Right.
So that'd be cool to have a future program where all of a sudden it's like, the odds of him missing that shot were particularly,
it was odd.
It was low, and he still missed it.
Yeah, who knows if it would work on a single player level, but I imagine if a whole team is throwing, it would probably be kind of clear.
I don't know. We'll see how it progresses.
Hopefully.
It's going to be weird as more and more money enters esports that, again, it comes with a double-edged sword. All right, I'm going to try and keep this one short, Zan. I think Call of Duty League can survive.
What do you mean by that? Because I think we already determined that it's going to make it through the 3 years. Are you saying you see it becoming a mainstay in the esports industry?
Yeah. I know we talked about probably, what was this, two podcasts back?
Yeah, something like that.
We both agreed that, 3 to 5 years, given the fact that Overwatch is kind of in a weird state and potentially could fail in the future, I've changed my mind. Ever since then, a lot of things have happened. We've seen we've seen a couple of homestand events, especially this upcoming weekend as well, that I would say are going over decently well, given the lack of, I would say, professionality leading up to the opening weekend. There was a lot of things that were kind of just in the air, one of which was the streaming platform, which has now been selected as YouTube on top of that. And so with the announcement, I'm going to base this off maybe a couple of small factors. With the announcement of YouTube taking over Call of Duty League and its exclusive viewership or broadcast rights, I think that Call of Duty League will last. And I'll be willing to say over 5 years, if not maybe a mainstay like that of League of Legends. Now, I'm going to leave myself some room to possibly go back on this, given that fact it's still so early on.
Yeah,
opinions will shift very drastically, but I have to be pretty confident in the fact that YouTube has now signed these guys, and alongside that, we have both agreed that for the future of streaming and YouTube gaming, they certainly have a chance to compete with Twitch, and I think it would be dumb for me to say if that's possible, then why couldn't a main league like Call of Duty League also survive along with it?
Well, I can give you several reasons why it could immediately crash.
Hope they're valid.
Yeah.
So I'm going to deny them all.
All right, go for it. Deny this. The game itself. The
has
game
a constant player base every single year.
has a constant player.
This year's game was one of the best selling of all time. Thank you, Zan. Next
Yes.
point.
Yeah. Hey, I'm not finished with my point.
Continue.
Yeah. First of all, a game changes every year, and like I said, I think when we talked about it last time, I think Call of Duty will always perform well, right? Like sales wise, right? But that doesn't mean it'll always be a good competitive game to watch. I don't think if you try to get people watching World at War, like right now, that they would be down. And we don't know what the devs are going to do. I certainly don't think they've been doing enough in coordination with the esports side to properly get things ready for tournament play appropriately. And I think we saw probably like an okay showing. Like it wasn't horrible from the game side, just purely talking about the game.
Yeah, there's still things to fix. I'll give you that. Dom sucked. Spawns still suck. But I would say generally went pretty well.
I'm just saying, like, this is an all right year. What happens when we get a bad year? Because we get a bad year for Call of Duty like every couple games.
That's a valid argument. I think the one main valid argument we have as of right now, this early on, would be a terrible game. Like if we have a terrible game with terrible game modes, God knows if we're gonna be dunking balls again in Call of Duty. I don't like that competitive side of things.
Yeah.
I'll give you that. But when it comes to the game changing, it's not necessarily going to be a severe downside because the game could also get better. We see Overwatch change constantly. We see League of Legends change constantly. It could be a fresh pace.
We see those games change constantly, but not becoming an entirely different game.
I wouldn't call it an entirely different game.
Yeah, I'd say like usually it's like
you're still shooting guns.
Yeah, well, you could say you're still shooting guns in Overwatch. Is that not a different game?
Typically, you're shooting an AR and an SMG take off every single year.
So are Call of Duty and CS:GO the same thing? You shoot ARs and submachine guns
and to a certain extent, you have your primary. There are usually 3 weapons in an FPS game that are used. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to be using pistols too often. You're not going to be using most of your SMGs or most of your ARs. There's usually going to be 3 weapons that take off and the pros stick to it no matter what the FPS. Mm-hmm. So in that same regard, sometimes Call of Duty is like CS:GO in the weapons you fire, and CS:GO is doing pretty well.
Yeah, but
I'm just trying to take a balance. I'm trying to take a different stance from you, and I think I'm doing an okay job at it. Okay.
Hey, I wouldn't say you're doing horribly, but once again,
I would say you got some valid pushbacks. There's a lot of up in the air. Mm-hmm. The devs can frick some things up, and all it takes is one god awful year, and all of a sudden sponsors back out, partners back out. I'll give you that. My of 2 points. One of which is YouTube. The second of which is possible viewership drops or rewards. When it comes time for viewership, weekend 1. 50 to 100K viewers, that's pretty goddamn good. If you also look at the VODs of this, the viewership on the VODs is pretty dang good for these select matchups compared to even LCS and LEC. Overall viewership is not even close, but still.
Right, and I will say these have been like marquee matches so far, so I think the real tell will be like a couple of weeks in when we see the more like low-key events as opposed to the huge like drama. Like, I think the Call of Duty League did something very smart in having a documentary series following the Huntsman leading up to that opening weekend. It's a great way to get people hype, even if it was a little bit basketball moms-ish for me. But it was still is good, right? I'd like to see how things go in the future, and I do agree with you in a sense with YouTube because I think it makes all the sense in the world for the Call of Duty community to return to YouTube because in a lot of ways that's where the growth of Call of Duty orgs and clans came from in the first place. So it kind of feels like it's returning home. I do think in large part this deal is likely a huge boon for YouTube because they probably got it a lot cheaper than that initial Twitch deal. Especially, I'm fairly confident that if it had been a great deal for Activision Blizzard or the people running the league, they'd be shouting about that number from the rooftops. And the fact that they've been silent speaks volumes.
Don't know that for sure. Can't confirm that.
Can't confirm, but
Been a great deal.
I will say, the instant they signed that Twitch deal, they were sending out tons of PR blasts like, hey guys, we just made this deal for 90 mil, guys. Yeah, it's great. It's amazing. And they've been fairly silent so far. They've been like, yeah, we like YouTube.
Yeah.
And that's about it. That's all they said. They've like, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, so I don't know. I think
if they can figure out these YouTube drops for both Overwatch League, I'm focusing mainly on Call of Duty. You boost viewership, all of a sudden.
I think that would definitely help a lot.
If you're hitting 100K concurrents on these streams, I would say Season 1 to a new platform, that's great. If YouTube Gaming can figure out more recommended features and actually having the stream show up better, and again, all of a sudden you appeal to the gigantic viewer base that is Call of Duty, who knows what viewership numbers could do. There are certainly valid points on both sides.
Yeah, I agree.
I just want to conflict with you a little bit.
I have the utmost faith in YouTube and Fwiz. I think they're going to grind to make this work on their end.
Yeah.
I have beyond the utmost faith in the orgs. They're going to grind to make this work on their end.
The players, the storylines,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
all there.
Absolutely. They are the ones
The game.
really, like, it's the developers and the publishers and the people actually running the league that I think we see weaknesses in.
And I think
I'm
we can
worried about that.
Totally agree on that.
Yeah.
Maybe I baited a little bit. I think Call of Duty League can succeed. I don't know how long it's going to survive. No one can answer that. But certainly, you got to admit, whether a fan or not, there are great sides and there are worrying sides about Call of Duty League.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll find out 5 years from now who's right, who's wrong.
Okay, this one might actually be relatively short. We'll see. We'll find out.
We'll find out.
We might be jinxing ourselves every single time we say that. But anyway, I felt it was a good time to look back at Apex Legends.
Oh, boy.
Because it's been a year since it released. And
a year?
Yeah, actually, just this week. The last week, if you're listening to the podcast right now, once again, it's pre-recorded. Yeah, it's been a year.
Only a year?
Only a year.
Are you correct on that?
100%.
Okay, I'll trust you.
Yeah, they just released their end of year one like retrospective officially, like Tuesday. Yeah,
Could be over a year. I'm throwing it out there.
no, hey, Apex is saying it's a year, so I'm gonna listen to the devs on this one.
Okay, hit me with it.
Yeah, and I just wanted to look back and say like, wow, Apex has really come a long way, and I think we could very easily see them becoming a consistent mainstays in esport once they start.
Easily. Okay.
Yeah, well, because for a couple different reasons, right? First of all, I will have to say I might be a little biased here. I love Respawn as a developer. Like, I will hold to my very potentially to my dying breath that Titanfall 2 has one of the best first-person shooter missions like ever made. Like, absolutely, Respawn just knows what they're doing when it comes to creating good game mechanics that work consistently, right?
I would say they've done things a bit poorly when it comes to Apex compared to Titanfall, but that's just me.
Well, hey, yeah, Apex is their first foray into like a full like battle royale live service game.
Yeah.
I think they've done pretty decently for their first year at it. They're hitting last numbers that I saw. They're at around 70 million average users, you know, which is pretty respectable. Definitely not at like Fortnite heights of that 200 mil or PUBG heights of that 400 mil, but you know they're getting there, especially for only a year. They've had 4 seasons worth of content now. Season 4 just kicking off right now. They've released a good amount of characters, I'd say. I think they have 4 now, 4 new ones. Crypto, Revenant, Watson, and Octane. Yeah?
Sure. Yes.
Apex Legends Pro,
I
Jake over here.
I stopped playing after Octane, so I would not know. But I will, yeah. They've done a great job announcing new characters.
Pretty consistent flow of updates. They seem very dedicated to making sure people are having fun with the game. They changed the map up fairly consistently, have like, you know, new events fairly consistently. They dialed back the microtransaction stuff after people called them out for being real problematic about that. Good on y'all. You know, not trying to be too greedy. And most importantly, and I think this is what's going to give Apex some real legs, is their active dedication to building an overarching plot and lore around the game.
The storyline is amazing.
Yeah,
they've done a great job with the storyline.
I think that's their huge. This is the huge thing that they have going for them over other games in the same space, right? Like, because Fortnite doesn't really have a story as far as I know, right?
League of Legends is a decent job too.
Yeah, they're getting there. That's for sure. I think they're doing more and more of that.
I wouldn't say it's dedicated storylines, but they do great. I would say.
Yeah, like they do like vignettes.
Yeah,
and I think we'll see more dedicated storylines as they roll out their other games that they're talked about. What else is there? What is the other main competitor? PUBG doesn't really have a storyline, as far as I know.
Nope.
Yeah, and I think Apex is the only one truly dedicated to consistently being like, hey, this is what's going on with Octane. This is what's going on with Revenant. And here's why he's doing what he's doing, like very consistently, right? And I think one of the huge things that I thought was really cool was their marketing over the past year. It's been very unique and interesting in that sense. Like I believe you saw how they introduced Revenant.
Yeah.
Yeah, they introduced Forge and then did a quick head fake. Had Revenant kill Forge.
I mean, it was a sick announcement. I'm just saying, if you're going to go from the esports perspective, the character storylines aren't going to carry an esport.
Yeah, not necessarily. Well, I'd say they wouldn't carry an esport, obviously, like on their own, right? But I think something like this gives players more of a reason to not necessarily players, but viewers more of a reason to be consistently interested. Where people have been asking for an Overwatch story for a while, right?
Yeah, but
and
that's not.
hasn't
I
been
don't know.
given.
Who knows about the carryover if that's the actual competitive like.
Obviously
Man,
not, yeah.
I need an Overwatch storyline so I can go watch San Francisco play this weekend.
I wouldn't say it's like a 1-to-1 comparison where I think like, oh, little Timmy is gonna be, because little Timmy loved what happened to Revenant, he's gonna be like, oh, I want to watch NRG.
Yeah,
like,
because they play Revenant or whatever. Yeah.
But I do think that this will keep people more invested in the game overall. And if you're more invested in the game overall, I don't see why that wouldn't transition into being potentially more invested into the esports side. We haven't seen a lot from them in esports yet. Because,
until this year.
Yeah, in March, they're launching the Global Series finally. And I think it's good that they waited a little bit. I know a lot of people were asking for them to have tournaments like right away. But I don't know. I think tournaments we see, they're hard to run. It's hard to run a good esports event consistently. So I kind of hopefully them taking their time means that they're actually taking the time to make sure the events are good and run well.
Yeah.
Because, like you were mentioning earlier with Fortnite pros not wanting to go to LANs because the events suck. Maybe.
But that's kind of a one-off. There were some terrible events. I think a lot of Fortnite pros make that as an excuse. I guess some people do forget, though, how new Apex is. And, but even Fortnite was doing events very, very early on. And I think my big issue was it taking this long for EA, who has plenty of money to dump this much money or millions into the game, which has made them an awful lot more back, especially with the amount of times they've sold out. And yes, they might be correcting those ways, but they certainly have sold out already with Apex Legends. And they put a lot of that, despite the lack of funding until now for prize pools, they did also put a lot of money into the marketing, like you said. Unfortunately for me, when it comes time for doubting the game, I actually really enjoy watching the gameplay, and I think it could be a successful, more of a BR type thing, because PUBG is only falling off ever since mobile takes off. Fortnite's certainly in a dip. Apex has its time now with this gigantic millions of prize pools, the Apex Global Championship Series. It's a great time to strike, but with that, we've seen consistently now, after each and every season, EA pumps money into these streamers who don't typically play Apex. The viewership soars. It's the highest played game on Twitch for a couple of days, and then boom, Dr. Dis ain't playing it, Courage ain't playing it, Tim ain't playing it, whoever it is who they paid, which they pay hundreds of streamers to be an Apex partner.
They pay a lot, yeah.
And it always falls off. So I'm waiting for it to hopefully not fall off. There's only so many other shots I can give these guys. I have my doubts, but again, if I'm going to support Call of Duty League, I guess I got to give Apex a chance too.
Right, yeah, I feel like that's fair. And Apex, like you said, mobile is rising. Their mobile version is theoretically coming this year, likely in partnership with Tencent. That's the word on the street.
Of course, what else?
Yeah, they have been in talks with them. And I don't know, I think that viewership question is definitely one to continually return to, because I think it was interesting the first time EA paid a bunch of people to play Apex, but at this point, I don't see why a streamer, if I was a streamer personally, and I was thinking about this cynically, I would stop paying as soon as the check stopped coming in. That way they send me another check to keep playing, because if I'm already playing, why would they pay me to play more?
It's actually induced this terrible cycle of these streamers literally only play the day or two they're paid. And they go back to their main game, and EA comes crawling back and says, hey, new season, you want to return for a sec? All these streamers who typically say they hate the game, they come back and say, I'm back, and then they leave again. It's kind of annoying. I don't blame the streamers, because obviously it's big money. I don't know. I'm excited. I am excited. Because we used to cover Apex, then we dropped off. Same thing with Rocket League. Now we're back. We ourselves are also trying to find the best things to cover. So if it does develop into a good esport, I'm going to be here to cover it. But we have our doubts about everything.
Yeah, of course. Everything's got holes. Nothing's perfect, and unfortunately.
Can EA make Apex Legends their top esport?
I don't think it'll be EA. I think it'll be Respawn, because Respawn seems to have way more leash from EA than EA's other developers. Because Respawn does not play ball with a lot of EA's shenanigans. They're just like, and I think it works out. I think Apex and Jedi Fallen Order and stuff like that, being financial successes, gives them the leeway to do what they need to do. So I think, I'm hopeful.
This will be the year. This will be the testing ground. We'll see if Apex Legends can actually, garner that esports viewership, competitive viewership, and actually stick with it. As per usual, we hope you guys all enjoy watching the Esports Rewind podcast. Big thing is coming, guys. Big thing is coming.
Absolutely.
I have to use the restroom. So, Zan, could you close us out here?
Yeah, real quick. As always, if you'd like to listen to us on the go on your favorite mobile device of choice, or even on your computer if you want to, if you feel so inclined, you can always find us on the Prediction Esports Talk Show Network. That's PREEDICTION, right here on the desk, right there. It's a great podcast network. Tons of fun esports talk shows if you're ever interested. Thank you to all of our audio listeners. We love you. We appreciate you. If you want to check out some daily esports news and content, check us out on YouTube at Esports Talk. Anybody wants to send us a story, just, say hey even. Reach out on Twitter at talk_esports. We're on Instagram. We drop some of our biggest stories of each and every day. If you just want the highlights, you can check us out on Instagram on IGTV at esports_talk. Big things coming soon. Just like Jake said, some of this has been in the works for over 6 months now, and finally coming to fruition. It's been a lot of hard work, but hey, we have great things coming from you all, and can't wait to share it.
Okay, thank you all for watching Esports Rewind Podcast, same time, same day, every single week. My name is Jake. This is my partner, Zan, breaking down esports and gaming news. Until next time, take care, guys. We'll see you back here sometime soon.